Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Mark 1 Tower, this is Albatross 1-3, requesting permission to land, over.
I don't need a computer to tell me how to land a damn airplane.
6.
Heads-up display, check.
5,
Lasers, check.
4,
Particle beam, check.
3,
Photon bolts, check.
2,
Chair control, check.
1.
Let's do it.
Broadcasting from a secret underground location somewhere in Mos Eisley. This is the Docking Bay 77 podcast. Make yourself comfortable. The show is about to start. Hello and welcome to a bonus episode from the Docking Bay 77 podcast. It's a bit poetic, maybe, that one of our first bonus episodes was on the album Electric Ladyland from Jimi Hendrix, a truly iconic guitar hero. This bonus episode also contains a truly iconic guitar hero. On this day, February 10th, 45 years ago, the world was introduced to arguably the greatest rock guitarist ever. Along with him, we met his very talented drummer brother, as steady as he goes and competent bass player, and a truly awesome frontman. After tearing up Southern California with their blistering live shows, Van Halen took their music into the studio and recorded an outstanding rock and roll debut album. Simply titled Van Halen and containing tracks Running with the Devil, Ain't Talking About Love, and Jamie's Crying, this album forever holds a place in music history. And joining me to discuss said album, we have Tim Brown. How's it going, Tim?
Fantastic.
I'm glad. Brad Kozo, the co-host of the Film by podcast. How's it going, Brad?
Well, we're talking about Van Halen, so it's going great.
Good day.
And Mike Vermillion joining us once again. How's it going, Mike?
It's going wonderful. Great topic to be on tonight.
Absolutely. Yes, I finally figured out a way to get a Van Halen episode into the podcast, and I'm sure it made both Brad and Tim very happy. So,
oh, hell yes.
Now, the idea jumped into my head when I was listening to an audiobook about the band, and they talked about the first album, and when it dropped, I'm like, oh, that's coming up in a few months. Podcast idea. So there we go. Anyway, so going in alphabetical order, Brad, do you remember the first Van Halen song you heard?
The first Van Halen song I heard, I'm sure, was Jump. I mean,
all right.
We had a tape that we just taped MTV for 2 hours, and on that loop was Jump in Panama at least 4 times. And even though I sat through all the videos, I was just waiting for just those two. I was hooked. I was hooked immediately.
So was that the first album you bought, 1984?
We had all the tapes.
Okay.
And like I said, with like the Kiss episode, it was like my cousin that used to bring over this stuff and just kind of get it in our head. And like one of the main ones I remember seeing was like Van Halen 2.
Okay.
And just kind of hearing it again and again. But it wasn't until I saw the band live in 91 on the For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge tour where it just like this thing hit me and just said, this is your band. Like, this is it. And I once I had kind of gotten a CD player, then like I went and started from the beginning and saved up enough money for Van Halen 1. Then after that 2, and just went down the line.
That's very cool. Very cool. How about you, Mike? The first Van Halen song you remember hearing?
I remember hearing Van Halen on FM stations in the early 80s.
Right.
So it's hard to say exactly what song it was, but I know it was something off of this album because it was insane popular. Even up until 1984, I remember all the cool kids were listening to the album, and rediscovering Van Halen, or backwards discovering Van Halen, I guess would be the way to put it.
Right.
But it's the one song that I think kind of got a lot of airplay to me was "You Really Got Me," the Kinks cover. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the first single off this album. So,
Right.
Do you remember the first record of theirs you bought?
I do. It was actually Van Halen too.
Nice. Very cool. All right, Tim, remember the first song?
It had to either be "You Really Got Me" or "Pretty Woman." It would have been about 83 when I became cognizant of their existence, right before Jump dropped, and then obviously January of 84 when 1984 came out. That was the first album I bought, but
Right.
I was moderately aware of them, and then Jump hit and my world changed. I was like, this is what I got to do. I got to get a keyboard. I got to learn to play, because my buddy Dave had already picked up a guitar, and like, this is what we're doing. This is my life now.
So I was always pretty familiar with all their singles on the radio, of course, because pretty much from late 70s through ever, their songs were on the radio. But I didn't buy the first album. It was actually For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge was the first CD of theirs I bought. So it's not that I kind of rallied against them. They just were never in my, oh my God, I got to listen to that. That being said, in recent years, when I started building my record collection, I went back and picked up Van Halen 1 and 2 and, Women and Children First and, Oh Yeah 812. And so I started adding, kind of rounding out my collection. So I kind of came to them very late and way too late. I never actually had a chance to see them live. So that was on me because I missed out on a lot of great music the first time around. So,
all right. So anybody here on the podcast tonight, did any of us see them before 1986?
Nope.
I win. I win.
Oh, okay.
I win. I got to see him in 86, the first tour with Sammy.
I did see him in 86 as well, but not before 86. Yes.
Yeah, I did not. Well, 84, 83, I was 13, 14 years old. My family was not letting me go to rock concerts quite yet. It was the summer after I turned 14 when I was finally allowed to start dipping my toe into the live music scene. And before that, I wasn't really aware of Van Halen because I wasn't really aware of a lot of music. I had a very strict religious family upbringing, and we just did not listen to rock. So after my parents passed on and I moved in with my aunt and uncle, they started, loosening up and letting me experience the world around us. And then I found Van Halen.
All right.
Yeah, I was just going to add to the concerts. My second concert was 5150 tour.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
This is your second actual concert. That's a great concert.
Yeah.
That might have been, that might have been my second or third concert as well, was the 5150 tour. I got to see Eric Clapton in 84, and I'm sure there was somebody we went and saw in 85, but I can't remember who it was off the top of my head.
Now, I'm pretty sure Brad wins for the sheer number of times seeing Van Halen.
Yeah. And the thing is, I don't actually recall the number, but what I can tell you that after the For Unlawful Carnal, so starting with that one, I never missed a tour.
Oh, all right.
So with the exception of Van Halen 3.
I didn't get to see him on Balance or VH3, and I didn't get to see the first reunion with Roth in 07.
Yeah. I'd say out of each of those tours, I went at least twice.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
So if it was,
you definitely got me then.
If it was at like the Nutter Center in Dayton, I was there, or Hare Arena, but I would also go to the shows in Cincinnati too.
Yeah. I was lucky to scrape together enough to get to one concert on each tour, but
it was worth it. It was worth it.
Dedicated fan. There you go. All right. So, Mike, you've prepared a little history on Eddie Van Halen. What have you got for us?
All right. Well, it's easy to find a lot of information on Eddie on the internet. There's just tons of sources out there for him. But born Eddie Ludwig Van Halen on January 26, 1955 in the Netherlands. Him and his family moved to the U.S. in the 1960s. He and his older brother began taking piano lessons at an early age. So they eventually hooked up with David Lee Roth and bassist Michael Anthony in the early 70s, forming the group called Mammoth that would soon become Van Halen. One of the things that you'd mentioned, his brother is a drummer, but the brothers actually started on opposite instruments growing up. Eddie was wanting to play the drums, and Alex was given a guitar, and he kind of gravitated. Alex went to the drums and started doing that and pushed Eddie off. And Eddie said, screw you, I'll play the guitar and I'll play the best I'd ever heard, So that's kind of what happened.
I think it worked out for everybody.
It did. It worked out well for everyone. Eddie Van Halen's father was a musician as well, too. And I remember correctly, played clarinet for classic music and stuff like that, classical bands.
And on a Van Halen album.
Big
Yes.
Bad Bill, Sweet William too. Dive down.
So yeah, there's a lot of music in the family. I think we're all familiar with the late 70s and on up, Eddie Van Halen. So, that was the quick and abridged edition of it.
All right. Sounds good. Brad, some production history on this particular record. What do you got for us?
Well, as you mentioned, it was released February 10th, 1978. It was originally going to be, as we talked about on the Kiss episode, produced by Gene Simmons. He had to leave to record Love Gun, but he basically told them, "You're so good, you're not gonna not get a contract. You guys got it." And he tore up the contract that they had. The record was produced by Ted Templeman and was engineered by Don Landy. Templeman, known for things like the Doobie Brothers and Van Morrison, basically he walked into the Starwood and he just saw them and he was just like completely just like blown away. And the record was very quick to make. It only took a couple of weeks, a couple of takes, and Templeman's producing style was more of lots of overdubs, running single tracks and stuff. But the guys wanted to record it kind of live, like how they did. So with the exception of a very few second guitars on things like I think Atomic Punk and Jamie's Crying, most of the album is live. Right. And that's how it sounds. And it was just so kind of crystal clear that it would turn out that way. And Templeman started releasing these things called the Merry Melodies. I think it's like the radio shows. It had about like 25 cuts on the record that wouldn't end up and then would later come on like the later releases like Lost Control, House of Pain, and stuff like that. Basically all of Different Kind of Truth would basically end up later. And once they settled on those cuts, it was they didn't know what single to put out first. Okay. And Eddie was at a bar, of course, and he was talking to this guy, Barry Brandt, from the band Angel. It was like a Sunset Strip rival. And he had the finished copy of You Really Got Me. And he played it for him. And then they heard about a week later, Angel was recording their own version of the Kinks cover. And that's why, because they did not want You Really Got Me first, because it was a cover. Right. But it like Templeman, told Warner Bros. Like, you got to push that as the single. They recorded like 3 videos. Those are all recorded at the Whiskey A Go-Go. Oh, okay. That's cool. The ones you can kind of see online and stuff. But yeah, I mean, they said it was a tough start, or not a tough start, just a very easy start. And I don't know if we want to talk about Eruption or if we're going to basically get to that when we actually talk about it. But, we'll talk about it in order. But, it was just, they said a very easy thing. But one of the funny things that happened is Roth didn't know how to approach Jamie's Crying. And he thought it was kind of more of a sweeter song and stuff. So the day before, he stopped smoking and stopped drinking just for the day to make his voice sound really good. He said he'd come in and he's totally flat. Woman told him, he goes, "You better start smoking and drinking out. Go back to what you were doing." And they recorded it and nailed it.
Nice. Oh, that's just too funny. So, all right. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Brad. All right. Moving on. We're going to go track by track. And first track, Running with the Devil, releases a single in April of 78. Brad, what do you want to say about this one?
It is a slow burn. None of the records start off with a boom big track till kind of the Sammy years. But this is just haunting at first. The first thing you hear is this bass and this crunch of a guitar. And you're just like, wow, that's really groovy. And then it's not done. And then he does this ridiculously awesome guitar solo that just goes like it's just like a diddle daddle type of thing. I mean, it was just such a strange and kind of it was very metal of them to release that as the opening track.
All right. I see that. Mike, thoughts?
Always a jukebox favorite for me.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember going down to the local pizza restaurant, and we would drive the poor guys in the restaurant nuts because we'd play it after again and again and again. But I'm on board with Brad. I think it starts off slow and it gets going. It's definitely hard rock. It's setting the tone for the album. It's saying this is who we are. I think it pulls in a little bit of the swagger of hard rock that had been missing for the disco era.
Agreed.
So it's a great opening track. I think it just really starts to make you salivate for what's coming on next.
All right, Tim, anything to add?
I actually did a video on my YouTube channel last year that I called "Why Don't I Know How to Play More Van Halen?" Because in all my history of playing music, I kind of avoided tackling Eddie because he was my hero, and I didn't want to be seen as like just this guy that copied what he did. But now I'm starting to go back and learn some of these riffs and things that he did on these songs. And one of the things that struck me about this track, this was the first song I picked, was it's kind of this economy of songwriting that he has where he can really make two notes on the guitar sound enormous.
Okay, right.
In that chord, that those little dyads that go down sound like they ought to be a lot more complicated than they really are. And I think that's a testament to the skill that he's got in songwriting and guitar tone.
Yeah. All right. I see that. I do agree. It is a slow burn. It's a little surprising as an opening track, I think, considering there's other songs on here, or other songs on this record that I thought might have been better. But it's definitely a good mix of groovy and heavy. So I like it. It's a good track. All right. Track number 2, Eruption. Mike, start us off. What are your thoughts on this one?
Okay, man. Mind melting when I first heard it. I was like, who is doing this with a guitar? It was something that you're just like, what the heck have I listened to? And
in 1978, nothing sounded like that.
No, nothing at all. And the closest we got would have been Jimmy Page, maybe.
Not even.
Right. The closest, yeah, it's like my face melted, and I'm looking around the room, and everybody else's reaction was kind of the same thing. And of course, then it cuts into "You Really Got Me," but it blows my mind. And then a little bit of history in this. It was a finger tapping warm up exercise that he did that they decided to put on the album.
Right.
And
actually, it was his live solo that they did for their gigs, and they had a gig coming up that night or that week while they were recording, and Eddie was just practicing in the studio for the gig later.
Right.
Right. Yeah, so it was kind of an impromptu thing to put on there, but if I remember correctly too, Eddie said he messed it up and he wasn't happy with that recording of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard that too. Yeah. Tim, any more thoughts?
I mean, somebody else said it best in one of the books I've got. Is that Eddie Van Halen completely reinvented the world of rock guitar, and it took him 1 minute and 42 seconds, which is the length of this track.
Yes. Brad, thoughts?
Well, like you said, he wasn't a big fan at first because I believe it was just one take that they did, but it's and guitar player Tim, because I don't play an instrument, correct me if I'm wrong. When you, like he was saying, talking about somebody like Jimmy Page as opposed to Eddie Van Halen, is like Jimmy Page's sounds a little bit more rougher, scratchier, and Eddie sounds almost like clean and smooth and almost like it seemed to me like it was just the strings were a part of his fingers. It just the way his hands move when you watch him play guitar, there's something there that's some kind of gift.
I may get myself into some serious trouble here, but
go right ahead.
I believe Jimmy Page is a fantastic producer and a songwriter and an arranger. I think he is at best an average guitar player.
I would
and comparing him to Eddie is just apples to oranges. It's just not even comparable.
Yeah. Because when you listen to that track, and I mean, you constantly have to hear it because you have to hear it before you hear, obviously, You Really Got Me. But it's so, it makes you smile on how good it is. And like you said, like they didn't hear of this in 1978. We haven't heard anything close to that since then. Not in 78.
There have been a lot of other guitar players, Satch, Vi, Reb Beach from Winger, guys that have done the tapping thing and taken the technical ability to arguably an even higher level than Ed, but you don't get there without going through Ed. Everything funnels through Edward.
Right. It seemed natural. And every time when I hear it, when I was listening to it before we were recording, I was just like, it's very beautiful. It is. It's very beautiful. Yeah. I love it.
Eddie always said he was kind of disappointed by a lot of other guitarists of the era because they did the tapping thing, but they did it as a look, I'm tapping now. Whereas for him, it was just an ingrained part of his musical vocabulary.
Yeah. He does it. He just does it as if it's just nothing. Like he's just waving his hand in magic, and it was.
Yeah, he was interpreting the guitar differently than anybody else ever had, and it was a natural thing for him. Thank God that maybe he didn't have some kind of crazy hardcore guitar instructor teaching him, that's not how you touch a guitar.
I just have a few things to say about this one. I don't like where this track is. I don't think Eruption should be the second song on the record. I think it's better placed at the beginning of side 2. Keep it with You Really Got Me. Start off side 2 with Eruption, You Really Got Me, and maybe move Jamie's Crying up to here. I think that would flow better. The reason I say that is because when you go to a rock concert, the second song is not a guitar solo. You're usually halfway through the show or whatever. So if they're doing their live show, that's what I would think would happen. So my only complaint about this is that I think it's in the wrong spot on the record. Because it does take brass balls to put a guitar solo on a debut album for sure. just
they had them in spades.
Yes, that they very well did. So all right. Track number 3, You Really Got Me. And as we mentioned, it was the first single released off the album. What do you got to say about You Really Got Me?
As far as covers go, a lot of times bands kind of fall flat when they do covers. And this is one of the rare cases where they outdid the original.
Right. Okay. All right.
There's also the story of I don't know if it was the same year the album was released or sometime later after the album was released. Eddie went to a Kinks concert or a Ray Davies concert, and Ray Davies, without knowing Eddie was there in the crowd, announced, "We're going to play a Van Halen song now."
Nice. All right, Brad.
Well, it's so cool when because this was a popular song,
Oh, yeah.
it's considered on like top 100 songs by like Rolling Stones, the Kinks version, and to, like I said, the balls to do that and to do with something that they did with this Ice Cream Man, Pretty Woman, and they made them their own songs. It was theirs. It was when you went to the show, you were going to hear You Really Got Me and, Pretty Woman and stuff, but they were the Van Halen versions, which were covers, but literally just really great remakes.
Right.
And
Right.
they made them their own. It was almost like you almost forget that's a cover,
Well,
or like, oh yeah, that's that other song. It was popular before them, but still it's that good.
Ed always said when they were playing the bar circuit and the party scene that he used to really get down on himself because they would try to play these covers of songs, these popular songs, and he kind of thought he was not as great a musician as he actually was because he couldn't sound like the originals.
Right.
He could only sound like himself.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And that tied in perfectly to making this, giving it its own stamp, giving it its own Van Halen feel to it, because Eddie couldn't really do anything but be Eddie.
Right.
Right. Yeah, and that's honestly, it's a pretty straightforward cover, except for what Eddie brings to it. So his flair. So yeah. Mike, thoughts?
Again, it was the first song that I can remember coming out in the early 80s from Van Halen as a kid. I remember it on the radio. I do remember thinking to myself, I've heard this song before, but I can't place where at. I think the Kinks need to go back and pay them a little bit of royalty, because I think the song helped make the Kinks a little bit more relevant when they weren't relevant anymore.
Oh yeah, that's probably true.
But I also think David Lee Roth, just Nazi gonzo style of singing the song, is one of the reasons why, again, it became its own version, and Van Halen owns the song now. And the Kinks just play a Van Halen version of it.
Right. Right. Well, we mentioned that earlier on the Hendrix episode with All Along the Watchtower, how Hendrix covered it and then Bob Dylan did Hendrix version after the fact. So
Yeah.
Right.
Please don't ever let me be. I only wanna be by your side. Girl, you really got me now. You got me so I don't know what I'm doing, yeah. Oh yeah, you really got me now. Got me so I can see that night. You really got me. You really got me. You really got me. Oh no, no.
yeah, so it happens when sometimes it doesn't happen very often, but sometimes it does happen. So
It definitely did not happen with the Winger Purple Haze.
no, let's not bring that back up. Come on, Tim.
I'm out for Tim.
I'm going to mute your mic for the next 5 minutes. You're in timeout. All right. Track number 4, Ain't Talking About Love, released September of 78. Brad, thoughts?
Number one track on the record. It's usually it was always around the closer at every show. They know it's that good. It is that good. It's a cool song. It's a cool song with some harsh lyrics. You're only semi good looking. He's being honest. He's just, no, not you, and he's kind of has to be, a jerk about it, but it's a tough song, and that, that weird chant, hey, and you want to cheer when you hear this song,
Oh yeah, yeah.
Song.
Yeah. Well, you know why the song is that way, right?
The hey.
No, the whole song, what it was originally intended to be. This song and a couple other songs on here were originally envisioned as making fun of punk rock because they didn't really like the punk scene at the time.
Yeah.
Eddie actually said he didn't really believe there were any punk rock bands. There were just rock bands that didn't practice.
Yeah.
And so they
wow.
wrote this song to kind of make fun of that, I've been to the edge, and there, he's and the harsh lyrics, and it kind of was supposed to be a kind of making fun of the punk rock tropes. But the problem was for Eddie, because Eddie can only sound like Eddie, he said, I couldn't really play badly on purpose. It just came out sounding normal.
And the only thing, it's the only track that I have to hear the very beginning. If it's halfway in or even a quarter in, I have to hear that opening riff.
You got to go back and read it. Yeah.
Opening riff.
But like even the main riff, the ba, 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 just the two chords, ba, da, ba, 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 that was just trying to make fun of these simplistic punk chord progressions.
Yeah, but then he gave him the finger with that opening riff. Basically, like, now try it.
Thoughts, Mike?
The one yet to be spoken about player of this is Michael Anthony, and I think he ties this together well with his bass line. I think he plays right into Eddie's chord transitions nicely. He keeps it tight. It gives him. I can hear his bass notes in this song,
right?
And I like it. To me, it's a party favorite. I mean, again, from my adolescence up until my mid-college years, I don't think a party was successful until you heard this song played at the party.
We're out of here, man. This place is lame.
That's
right. Exactly. Yeah.
I agree with Brad. It actually is one of my favorite songs on the album. There's definitely a great energy to it. We mentioned the riff. I enjoy how Eddie's solos are different from the rest of the album, and they are still very, very cool. So things that stood out to me.
And Michael Anthony is hands down the most underrated bass player and vocalist in rock.
Yeah, you know what? We'll get to some thoughts about him after one of the books I read about the band, about how he was treated, and it's unbelievable that he stayed around as long as he did, because he's definitely, he helps so much with their backing vocals. And he's there. He does his job, and he doesn't cause problems. And he's very underrated. So for sure. All right, track number 5, "I'm the One." Mike, thoughts?
It starts slacking down a little bit. I shouldn't say slacking. It starts cooling off a little bit. But I mean, my gosh, the first 4 tracks out of the gate are all just awesome. I think "I'm the One" would have been better off on side 2. And then
right.
Jamie's Crying maybe brought up to side 1, like you'd mentioned. It's there. It's good. I mean, it's just following up those 4 huge hits. And it's kind of like, I don't know. I mean, it's just like, unfortunately, you're the illegitimate stepchild on side 1.
Wow, that was a little harsh.
Well, I disagree with that. There is no down point to this album for me.
Well,
every song on this album is perfect in my opinion.
It's
well, we'll get there.
I'm the One. I would have liked to send Jamie's Crying fill that spot and then bump it down, but I mean, it's not a top 5. I'm not saying it's the order of the songs are not like Running with the Devil's number 1 because it's track number 1, but I just think it would have been better mixed in somewhere on side 2. But it's a great song. I mean, as we get into the album further on, I don't think there is a bad song in this album.
Tim, thoughts?
I mean, I kind of said what I said, but I will point out this song, I think, is in order of track order, the first real example of what has kind of come to be known as the Van Halen shuffle. Van Halen, almost every album has this kind of over the top metal, distorted, but kind of almost like a rockabilly, almost like a big band kind of bop to the drums, but just done at high velocity and high volume.
We came here to entertain you, leaving here we aggravate you. Don't you know it means the same to me? Honey, I'm the one you love. Come on, baby, show your love. Give it to me. I see a glow that fills this room. I see it rolling out of you. Hear your message from above. I'm telling you. Oh, show. Come on and show your love. Ah, yeah.
And this is probably the first example of that. You hear it again when the heavy part kicks in on Ice Cream Man. There's other stuff on other albums where this is just kind of a recurring Van Halen staple in this song.
All right, Brad.
See, I think this is one of the top 5 tracks of the album. It's with the exception of Eruption, this is Eddie's best guitar work on the album. He does multiple solos, and Alex and Mike and Dave are all staying with each other. They are all moving at this fast pace. Dave's going off. We came here to entertain you. Alex has the dun 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 dun. You hear the bass going. This is kind of a fast sprint song, and I think it's a great track to follow up those 4 hits because this one didn't get airplay.
Right.
And it's one of those that people, maybe they thought, hey, they might turn the record off after Ain't Talking About Love, but they let it play for a second and they're like, oh, wait, let's finish this album because this next song is pretty good too. But yeah, I mean, and you can hear even when they did the tour, like towards the end, like the 2015 tour, the last tour, he was still playing I'm the One. And on that live record, Live Tokyo, he hits every one of these notes and still just goes like a machine gun.
See, I agree. I love this song. It's got a great groove. I mean, as fast as it is, there's a definite groove to the song. And I really kind of like the doo-wop break after the solo. I think that's a lot of fun. It's kind of a nice thing to put in the middle of the rest of that adrenaline rush. So
it's like catching your breath. Like when they do it, it's like catch your breath. We're not.
Well, Van Halen's always known for putting in those real tongue-in-cheek moments in the songs too.
Yeah. I like this one. So all right, let's pick up the needle, flip over the record, and head to side 2. Jamie's Crying releases a single July 78. Brad, thoughts on Jamie's Crying?
It's groovy. It's sexy. Dave said, everybody was doing rock music. He goes, but we were the only band that could play rock music you could dance to. And you can dance to this song. It's groovy, sexy song. It's one where I don't want to say they're taking a break, but it's a very simple solo, but just a groovy groove throughout the song. It's just, it's a fun song.
Yep. Mike?
I like it a lot. It's like you guys are saying, it's a great song. It's got a good rhythm to it. I like the lyrics to it. I like the story that it tells. Bad boy breaks heart of sweet girl. And how many of us were in middle school knowing the bad boy that was breaking the heart of the sweet girl that we all wanted to date? So I could relate to this song growing up. I like it, all of it. I think it's a great track to start off the next side of the album.
Now Jamie wouldn't say all right. She knew he'd forget.
Tim?
I hate hearing the sample that was used for Wild Thing, because every time I do hear it, I want to hear this song, and then I'm stuck listening to Tone Loc, and I'm like, damn it.
You know, you can turn the radio off. It's okay. You know, I'm pretty sure you own this song somewhere, and you can, you know.
But I get all excited. I hear the drum. I'm like, yes, Van Halen. No.
Well, you should be happy. You're like, wow, I'm going to listen to this song now.
Yeah, that's what I do. Yeah.
I really enjoy the riff in the chorus. I think it's very, very cool. And I really like how he incorporates that riff into his solos, and he makes those very interesting in that way. This one always makes my Van Halen playlist. And I really think Michael Anthony stands out, particularly on this track. I really like what you can hear him very well on this particular track.
Yeah.
All right. Track number 7, Atomic Punk. Tim, thoughts?
Again, this is another one of those that they were trying to make fun of punk, but ended up just kind of sounding like Van Halen. And I love the effect at the beginning with the scraping his hand on the strings. You know, I mean, it's so cool. It's so damn cool.
Brad?
Yeah, that crunch. I feel like it's like, oh, this is probably how they sound, and they're like, what'd you do there? You know, that sounds pretty cool. And it's a rough song, you know. I rule these streets at night by me. You know, I'm the atomic punk. So I mean, it's a rough song. It didn't get a lot of play. I feel like after this album, it wasn't really put in any live shows. Sorry, I've listened to a lot of bootlegs over the tours. So it kind of got left on the floor, but it's a good song to revisit, you know, because there's a lot of good stuff going on in there, though.
Mike?
It's a weird song to me, not in a bad way. It's just the lyrics, like you said, I rule these streets at night, I'm the atomic punk. I mean, I'm trying to get my mindset into what they're singing about. Now, Tim explaining how they're trying to thumb their nose at actual punk scene. Okay, now I'm getting a little bit enlightened here. So this is one of the things about these podcasts that I enjoy is I always walk away learning something.
Always happy to help.
Yes, and I like the track. It's like I said, it took me a while to get my head around the lyrics a little bit and stuff. But from a music standpoint, it's still a good song. I just had to listen to the lyrics a few times and be like, what are they trying to, what are they singing to me and stuff like that? But
if you're really going to try and analyze David Lee Roth lyrics, that way lies madness.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, thank you. Yes.
You
So
are barking up the wrong tree.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
for real.
So
Okay.
just turn the brain off and listen to the song. And it's a great song.
Exactly.
So this is actually my least favorite song on the album. And that doesn't mean I hate it. And it's my least favorite because one simple ring. I love the music. I really, really enjoy the music to it, but the vocals don't fit with the progression of the music. It's almost like every time I listen to it, I kind of feel like they're working independent of each other. And that bothers me.
I am a victim of the science age, a child of the storm. Oh yes, I can't remember when I was your age. For me, search no more, no more. Nobody rules these streets at night but me, the atomic punk. Oh yeah.
And that's like I said, I'm not trying to figure out the lyrics because, like you said, it's Roth lyrics. What's the point? But for whatever reason, every time I listen to this, I kind of feel like Roth is doing his thing and the rest of the band is doing their thing. And it just doesn't sit right with me. That's I, like I said, I don't hate it. I don't love it, but it is, easily my least favorite track on the album.
See that.
I hear what you're saying about that. And it makes me wonder, because Eddie has even said that he was not really happy with the way the album overall came out, that it didn't really sound like them when they played live. It just didn't capture the heaviness and the energy that they have during their shows. And I wonder if this song isn't a prime example of that.
Maybe that would make sense. Makes sense. All right. Track number 8, Feel Your Love Tonight. Mike, thoughts?
Again, a great song. A little love song for Dave, a little tongue in cheek, if you will.
Yes. That's very Dave, very tongue in cheek.
Yes.
Getting funny in the back of my car.
Yes.
That dude took nothing seriously.
Still doesn't.
Yes. But yeah, it's another jukebox song for me. I don't care to go into the place and this is the only Van Halen song on the jukebox. I'm still going to play it. I still like it. I have no problem picking it up and listening to it. So yeah, I can't wait to feel your love tonight. Absolutely. It's a great song.
Mm-hmm. Brad?
I mean, it's a little cheesy, Dave, or lyrics usually are, but it didn't matter because he could rhyme really well and make it sound really fun. This is where you hear the band get to sing. The whole band get to sing. I think this is one of the ones
harmonies.
Where Mike and the rest of the band sound, because they're singing a lot of the the chorus plus but they're singing a lot in this song. So when I think of this song, I think of the whole band singing. But it's got another great guitar riff, and the fact that Eddie could play the lyrics, he could play, the melody of the lyrics. Like, you don't need the words, you just need that.
As identifiable as Eddie's guitar sound is, yeah, you're right with the backing vocals too. That is one of the true hallmarks of the classic Van Halen era, was those high harmony parts that were really, really well executed. I mean, a lot of other bands didn't really focus that much on their backing harmonies the way Van Halen did.
No,
very true.
Not at all. Not Sabbath, not Zeppelin. It was just, Robert Plant and Ozzy.
Yeah. That's one of the things why I like to call out Michael Anthony, because if it wasn't for him, I don't think you don't get those backing vocals like you do.
Not at
all.
Well,
and those harmonies lended into that pop mindset they were kind of going for too. They weren't trying to be just a hard band. They wanted some pop sensibility in the songs. They wanted to bring girls to the party. Van Halen was one of the first metal bands, hard rock bands, that really brought women into the crowd.
Yeah. Yeah, this song is actually one of my other favorites. I have 3. This makes one of the other ones. I dig how the backing vocals happen during the verse as well, not just in the chorus. It adds a nice little flavor to it. I really dig the pre-chorus, and the arrangement of the chorus after the lead break is very, very cool. I like that a lot. So, all right, track number 9, Little Dreamer. Brad, start us off.
Okay, like Dayton, Don't Kill Me. It's not that I don't like the track, but it is my least favorite track. It's them slowing down to a groove that I feel like they later found with Women in Love and Van Halen 2. Here, I felt they didn't get that smooth, kind of laid back groove until they did Women in Love. And I felt that they were trying for that. And the song, it's still a good song. It's just my least favorite on the album.
All right, Mike.
I like the lyrics on this one a lot. I like it. It's so hard for me to not say I like all this album. I mean, and I hate to be in the broken record.
I already said this is a perfect record for me.
I hadn't listened to it for probably 15 years until getting ready for this, and I forgot how great this album is. And Little Dreamer is one of those songs. When we were on road trips and it was my turn to put the cassette in the car, my parents could get along with this song. They were okay with it. So that being said, I like this song a lot.
All right, Tim.
I'm kind of in agreement. There are no bad songs on this album, but if I'm ranking the songs on this album, I'm probably putting this one last just because there are tracks I like a little better on each one. But I will say that Van Halen at their quote unquote worst is light years beyond what your average band is ever going to achieve. So
agreed.
Yeah, sure. So that's funny. Two people said their least favorite track. This is one of my other favorite tracks on the record. So
I knew it. I knew it.
Voted you least likely to succeed. I had to tell them, baby, you were armed with all you need. Seems no one's talking about those crazy days gone past. Weren't they amazed when you were pitiless? You are the little dreamer. You were.
I like the groove.
you just made that up to be contrary.
No, I can show you my notes. There's stars next to 3 songs. This is the last one that gets stars. I really enjoy the groove to it. I really do. And it's one of the things I noticed. They do it a few times. Excuse me, they only do it a couple times actually throughout the album where they add a backing guitar track during the solo. This one does not have that. It's just the lead, and you have the bass and the drums in the back. And I prefer that because I can't stand when there's one guitar player in a band, but yet there's a backing guitar track while they're doing their lead. That just really kind of rubs me the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway,
again, that's something even Eddie said he didn't really like about the recording process.
There's only a few that they drop that into. Most of them don't have any backing tracks, which I prefer. This song kind of gets forgotten, and I think that's a shame because I really like this song. This is also one that makes it onto my Van Halen playlist. So, all right, track number 10, another cover, Ice Cream Man. Brad, start us off.
Now, I never heard the original.
I've never heard the original either.
Okay. But
preparing for this, I made sure to listen to it.
I mean, I love this song, but it is played way too much on the radio. If anyone still listens to the radio, or it just also just pops up all the time on, whatever shuffle I hit or anything like that. I mean, it is a good song, but it obviously doesn't get good until Eddie arrives and the rest of the band. I mean, it's fun. It's quirky. It was played at every live show that they did up until through 84. And it was just, I felt sometimes that it was overplayed. It's a good song, but it's not, you really got me, ain't talking about love, running with the devil good, to be played all the time.
All right, Tim, thoughts?
One of my favorites of all time. I just absolutely dig it. It's that Van Halen shuffle feel, where they're just kind of boom, 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 but high velocity in your face, and Ed is just ripping.
All right, Mike.
This is one of the songs that I actually heard when I went to see David Lee Roth solo, and he performed this song, which was, I thought, a little bit ballsy on his part.
For real.
Oh, he
Yeah.
plays nothing but Van Halen songs.
Well, what else is he going to do? He only
well,
has
this
one
was
piece of album.
Yankee Rose, even though he could play a bunch of Eat 'em and Smile. But anyway.
Right. No, I remember him coming out and playing this, and I was like, that's a ballsy choice. But it is David Lee Roth being David Lee Roth. He took this song that was a blues song and made it poppy and rock, So I have no problem with it. Again, there are no bad songs on this album. And I agree with Brad in that I think it gets too much airplay time. There's other deserving songs on this album that deserve to be on the radio more.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, track number 11, On Fire. This actually was released as a single in Japan in September of 78. So, Tim, thoughts on this song?
If you're asking me to pick like my favorite song on I can't pick a favorite Van Halen song on this album because it's like trying to pick your favorite child. You can't do it. I love this song. I love the riff. I love everything about it. Like so much of the rest of this album. There's no wrong answer here.
Brad?
There's songs that I kind of revisit and kind of re-love. This is one of them. This used to be the basically the opener, when they were doing their gigs, On Fire was the opener. And recently what we got a little taste of what a sort of reunion would be, or at the Taylor Hawkins show, Wolfgang Van Halen played two Van Halen songs. One of them was Hot for Teacher and the other one was On Fire. And it just made me want to revisit that song. And it's got some really great parts to it. And I think this is the signature Mike song because, man, you can hear that scream. That is not Dave all the way. That is mixed with Michael Anthony. So, yeah, this is one of those songs I've kind of revisited and listened to a little bit more often because I felt like I myself didn't give it its due, or it just kind of just resurfaced in my likes recently.
Cool. Mike?
I forgot all about this song until I went back to this album. So I was pleasantly surprised. I was like, what is this On Fire? I was playing it through the tracks and I was like, oh yeah, this is good. Why did I forget about this song? And I don't know why we tend to let it fall off the end of the album. Maybe it's just because we're so brain fried from all this great music and guitar solos and all the things that are going on this album. You're just kind of like, at the end of the day, you're collapsing on the couch and letting this thing, because to me, Ice Cream Man almost seems like the finish of the album. And then you have On Fire come up, but I like it.
Yeah.
It's in my top 5.
Oh, okay, cool.
I do think I agree with you, Mike, about Ice Cream Man feeling like the end of the album. I feel like track order wise, they could have swapped this and Ice Cream Man, because Ice Cream Man kind of feels like that's the end of the show. We're done, ladies and gentlemen.
Yep.
See, I don't know. I kind of like how this one ends. I think this is a nice way to end the record, because where my complaint with Atomic Punk, with it nice and heavy, but the lyrics don't, kind of the vocals don't go along with it. This time, I think they work great together. I think this is a strong closer. Maybe I can kind of see having Ice Cream Man be the final song. But I would honestly, part of me would love to hear this as, like if there was the opening of their shows, maybe this should have been the opening to the album. I don't know. That would have been interesting.
I was going to ask you that. Should they have put that up top? Because like I said, this was the song that they would open the shows with in that first tour. with Sabbath.
Should this song have opened the album instead of Running with the
Right.
Devil?
Yeah, I kind of feel like maybe that would have been a better choice, you know, because just because Running with the Devil is a slow burn, it's a great song, but it's I don't know. That would have
Even
been
those opening chords, it's like just sitting in your face. Here is Van Halen.
Yeah. And it fades out, which I know you don't like.
No, I don't.
Tracks
That's
just
actually a
fade
note.
out.
I wish for the final song, I just hate fade outs, especially with a heavy track like this. I think a fade out does such good justice. So
could have used a crash.
Yes.
A big crash at the end.
Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, maybe I don't know. Yeah, maybe it's just in the wrong place. I mean, like I said, I like it, but maybe it's in the wrong place in the album. So all right. So before we move on to our final thoughts and ratings, we're going to take a short break and hear from our friends at the Surely You Can't Be Serious podcast.
Okay, Jason, test of our friendship. Which is better, Van Halen or Van Hagar?
Man, honestly, I think Van Hagar has better music.
Oh, no. It's Van Halen. You're wrong.
What about Michael Jackson's Bad album versus Michael Jackson's Thriller album?
Thriller, obviously. Bestseller ever.
No. See, people trick themselves into believing that it's actually bad.
Okay, Trading Places versus Coming to America.
Trading Places is the funnier movie out of this deal.
No, Coming to America is the funniest movie of all time. So if you find yourself backing one of us or the other of us, you need to be listening to the Surely You Can't Be Serious podcast.
That's right. We have a friendly discussion. Dee and I are best buddies, and we take a deep dive and look at the behind-the-scenes stuff, the history and the fun facts of all these wonderful movies and music from our youth.
It's really just an opportunity for us to geek out about the things that we really loved growing up.
For example, do you know the actor that was in Star Wars, Batman 89, and Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Yeah, sure, it's Harrison Ford.
Harrison Ford wasn't in Batman.
Oh, yeah, Billy D. Williams.
Billy D. Williams was not in Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Who was it?
Well, you've got to tune in to the Surely You Can't Be Serious podcast when we discuss Raiders of the Lost Ark versus Back to the Future to find out the answer.
All right, we are back. All right, so final thoughts and impressions before we give it a rating. Brad, how do you seal this album off? What are you going to say about it?
I mean, an album, when I first heard it all the way through, I couldn't believe something was this good. It didn't seem real that it was good. And what I love about the album is that you can't pigeonhole Van Halen. At a time when this kind of music was done, the metal scene, the rock scene was done, it was disco and stuff. Were they metal? No, because then it gets groovy. Then you can dance to it. But then it goes a little bit dark. And then now they're doing an ice cream song. You couldn't figure them out.
Right.
They were just that good. And I think it just definitely continued on through those at least 6 albums. But this one could be the one of the best debut albums of all time, I think, especially in rock and roll. I think if it's not a perfect album, it's damn close.
Right?
No, it is. It is.
It's not your turn, Tim. Go. You're in timeout again. Mike, final thoughts.
I'm following up with what Brad said. It's a great first effort out of the studio. I can't believe these guys weren't discovered sooner, or how in the heck did they not explode on the scene before this came out? It blows my mind. Like I said, I hadn't listened to it in probably 15 years, and I played it just the other day, getting in and ready for this, and I was like, "Holy crap! It's everything that I imagined it being, remember it being, and more." And it takes me back to a time when I was an adolescent. That's one of those cool things about it too. It can take you back to 1983 in my case.
All right. Very cool. Tim, final thoughts? And yes, we know it's a perfect album. Okay. Just move on.
Tying in what Brad said, you can't pigeonhole Van Halen. I kind of categorize Van Halen. They're one of 2 bands, I think, that you can use the name of the band to describe them. And that's really the only way you can describe them. There's Van Halen and there's Rush. What are they? They're Van Halen and they're Rush. That's what they are. If you don't understand that, then you just need to learn, because there's no other way to explain it. I have a quick story that is my greatest tale of misery from my youth regarding this album.
Oh, cool. You and misery. I'm good. Let's go.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah. But you will all be, you especially, Dayton, I think will be in tears by the end of this.
Cool.
So I graduated in 1988, and I took, for my last 2 years of high school, I took our radio broadcasting class, and we had a live broadcasting FM stereo station at the high school that the students ran.
I'm still so jealous that you got to do that and I didn't.
Yeah, we did that. And for my graduation present, the teacher of the broadcasting class, Miss Taylor, gave me the station's original promo copy of Van Halen 1. The ones that they only send to the radio station that are stamped for promo use only. Has the little embossed thing on it. So a couple years after I graduated, I had gotten into an apartment with a friend of mine, and a tornado hit the apartment.
I know where this is going.
And we were kicked out of the apartment for about a month and a half while they were repairing the roof of the place. We had to leave all our stuff in there because it was just, we weren't allowed to go back in. I got back into my apartment. My box with all my LPs, including that copy, had been stolen.
That's just awful. That's just wrong.
Well, we know what we're getting Tim for Christmas if we can find it on eBay.
Yeah.
Well, you can get those Japanese singles like on eBay, like all the Japanese singles that they released. It's like, a couple $100, but if I had the money, I would totally. I've spent too much money on the Van Halen stuff. It's. But you know what?
My great lament from youth is losing that album.
Yeah.
See, you said too much money, but aren't you just saying I spent enough money or the perfect amount of money on Van Halen stuff? Isn't that really what you're trying to say?
What I'm trying to say is most likely when more stuff gets released, reissued and stuff like that, they're going to get more of my money.
Right. That's
but I
how
think
it goes.
what a fun experiment should be, as much as people don't think that Van Halen, I want to say, blew Black Sabbath off that tour in 78, but do a little experiment.
Black Sabbath even says they did that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Listen to Never Say Die and listen to it first, or listen to it second, as if they were the headline act, and you tell me who won that battle.
No, there's no question.
I mean, and I like Never Say Die. Not a lot, but I like a lot of some of the tracks.
Right. All right, gentlemen, let's give this a rating. Your choices are Never Again, Stream It, Buy It Used, Buy It New, or Vinyl Worthy. Brad, your rating, please.
Vinyl Worthy.
Mike?
Absolutely vinyl worthy.
Tim?
No question. Vinyl Worthy, please.
All right, and that's 4 for 4, because yes, it's vinyl worthy. It belongs in your catalog. It belongs in your collection, regardless of how you get it, because it is arguably one of the best debut rock and roll records of all time. And if you don't have it, you're making yourself a mistake. And I corrected that. It's in my catalog, along with most of their other albums as well. So now with most of our music episodes, I do put together a companion playlist that drops the same day that the episode does. And I am now including a link to said playlist in the show notes. It will include this entire album plus the original versions of the 2 covers as well. And then Tim has put together some essential tracks for to kind of focus on Eddie. So Tim, how did you come up with the songs that needed to be included in that?
Well, I asked myself, I named the playlist, why is EVH considered the greatest? And I wanted to make it for people who have never listened to Van Halen, but they've kind of always heard Eddie Van Halen is the greatest guitar player of all time. And they're wondering, so what's up with that? What is this all about? So I went through and, I put together a short playlist. It is 2 hours and 51 minutes. And I just kind of went album by album, and I picked what I felt were great examples of Eddie's guitar playing, his lead playing, his rhythm work, the sound he's able to get out of his guitar, the tone he gets. I mean, people have always talked about, other musicians have talked about over the years getting to play through Eddie's rig at various points. They're like, oh, I'm going to get that sound. And they just sounded like themselves. There was nothing special. the tone is all him.
Yeah.
It's not the gear, it's him. I have an EVH Wolfgang guitar. I don't sound like Eddie Van Halen.
Kind of jumping on that a little bit, and I probably should have maybe mentioned this when we were going over his bio, but some of the patents that Eddie holds.
Oh,
yes.
We hadn't really touched that iceberg, which isn't part of the discussion on the album, but, you know, the man did create some interesting advances for guitars and amplifiers and stuff like that, which maybe we segue into another episode on something like that.
Yeah, he really did change gear
Yes.
in a way that I think not a lot of people truly appreciate.
Yeah, that's very true. I didn't, like I said, growing up, I had no clue. It wasn't until later years where I really kind of understood music and more how different guitar players got different sounds and things like that. And yeah, it was one of those things that even in recent years, I've just finished a book that I sent you a copy, Tim, about the history of the electric guitar. And it really touches on a lot of things that he changed because he wasn't able to buy guitars that gave him what he was looking for. So he went out and just basically built stuff that made it work.
Yeah.
So
when you look at instruments now, it almost seems like, well, duh, why wouldn't you do that? But at the time, nobody had taken a Stratocaster shaped body and put a humbucker in it, a humbucking pickup. It just hadn't been done. And Eddie did that. And now suddenly everybody was like, smacked themselves on the forehead. Why didn't we think it? Why hasn't somebody already done this?
He saw it differently. He saw it and he just knew how to play. There's some people that just know it. You know, they see it. It makes sense. It made sense to him. And just some people, I've tried to play guitar. No, I can't do it. I can't do it because it doesn't make sense to me. I love guitar players and guitarists, but I just can't do it. But he just saw it and just knew it all made sense.
So I know I've been reading some more music history books, let's call it like that. I did finish reading Running with the Devil by Noel Monk, their former manager, which was a fantastic read. And there's a lot of things in there I expected, and there was a lot of things in there that surprised me, and it was it's great, worth checking out. Brad, what Van Halen books have you read, and do you recommend?
I've read quite a few. Eruption, Conversations with Van. It's basically interviews.
I just started on that one.
I read Everybody's Won Some, which is a pretty good detailed history, but I've also read David Lee Roth's book, which you can kind of skip. But Sammy Hagar's book, Red, is pretty detailed. It's pretty brutal, but endearing at times. I have a coffee table book, like a picture book by Neil Zlauser.
Right.
And I think there's one that I want to get it, but it's just a little out of my price range right now. It's like a new photo book through the Hagar years to the reunion years, like all the way up to this very end, like in like 2015 when they did that very last tour.
Wow.
So that's one, but I mean, I guess I have, but out of all the books that I have, they're mentioned maybe 12 times. So maybe 6-7 books, and, you know, mentioned in different books about either other artists or just about metal or music itself.
Gotcha. All right, Tim.
There was the first one I remember reading was called Van Halen 101 by a gentleman named Abel Sanchez. And then I also read Van Halen Rising by Greg Renoff. And like Brad said, I'm currently reading Eruption, Conversations with Eddie Van Halen by Brad Talinsky and Chris Gill.
Nice.
I would like Michael Anthony to write a book. I think we would get the true story of the Van Halen world if Michael Anthony wrote a book.
I agree, but I don't see him doing that. He's so, like I said, he's so unassuming, and he's just too nice. I think, you know, he's just kind of there, you know, he's
I don't think we're going to get that, but I agree it would be fantastic.
I don't want a book of just slams. I want a book of, look, I was there when this really great thing happened and I saw it, type of thing.
Right. No, I agree.
Yeah.
I just don't think we're going to get it.
Yeah, I guess.
Well,
I don't have a lot of time to sit and read is my only problem.
My thing is I kind of do a combination. I have 8 to 9 hours a day at work where I can listen to music, audiobooks, and podcasts, and I make use of that. But for Christmas, I actually received about 10 different books about movies and music and things like that, and as well as some fiction. And so, yes, I am very much a fan of books, and I'm going to have a library. I'm working on it right now. I've run out of shelves. They're now sitting on the floor.
Yeah. If you are a super fan, there's a podcast that I started listening to years ago called the Van Halen Dave and Dave Unchained. And it's just a Van Halen podcast, and they've been doing it for years. And they will have, frequent producers, managers, or people that worked with Van Halen on the show. And even sometimes people like Gary Sharon will come on and stuff. They're always really cool about answering emails. I've emailed them a few times and they've answered my question on the air. It's just, if you're like kind of a super fan and want to know a little bit more about it, they review, like this 10th, anniversary albums or the authors of the books. I think they actually did talk to Greg Renoff and stuff, but it's a really fun one too, if you want to hear a lot of Van Halen news.
Well, I'm adding that to my playlist.
Thank you guys. I appreciate you guys stopping by. Brad, what can you tell us about what's going on at a film by?
We've got some new directors we're going to be talking about. We've got our new series with Scott Hoffman and Dave Burns are together and Unleashed on Film at 45. They've done a couple already, some familiar favorites and some ones you're like, you're doing that one. But I mean, just imagine, because I was telling Jeff, we're such personality, always wanting to talk the most. To hear Scott and Dave talk a lot is quite the interesting tidbit.
Yeah, when I was listening to the Grease episode, I was having a lot to say, and it looked kind of weird because nobody that saw me doing my job was like, "What's he doing? Who's he talking to?" So, and I am excited. I know they're going to be covering Animal House, and I will be on that episode whether they let me or not. I'm gonna I want to find out.
I think I'm gonna be on Deer Hunter. That's for sure.
Nice, very cool, very cool. All right. Well, thank you for stopping by, Mike. I appreciate it.
Always.
And thank you, Tim.
You're welcome.
All right. I want to thank the listeners. It does mean very much that you carve out a bit of time out of your busy day to listen to us. And thank you very much. What do you think about this album on the 45th anniversary of the release? What are your thoughts on Van Halen in general? Is Eddie Van Halen the greatest rock guitar player of all time? If you want to chime in, Tim, shut up. If you want to chime in, we are on social media, on Twitter at DockingBase77Pod, on Facebook at DockingBase77Podcast, and you can reach out to us by email, DockingBase77Podcast@gmail.com. You can also go to Patreon and support the show that way. Search DockingBase77 on there, and you can be a $5 patron, $3 or $1, like Tim. Tim is a patron, so thank you, Tim, and help offset the cost of producing this podcast. Upcoming episode, Liam Lewis and Andrew Blakely are going to come by next week, and we are going to look at the semi-autobiographical Spike Lee movie, Crooklyn. Do yourself a favor and listen to more music. And remember, physical media is better than streaming. The Docking Bay 77 podcast is produced and edited by Dayton Johnson. Recorded with Rode Pod mics, the Zoom PodTrack P4, and edited on Audacity. Opening music provided by Eric Jason Brock. You can find him on YouTube and Bandcamp. Thank you for listening.